Welcome to Darin Batchelder's Real Estate Investing Show. Each week, you will learn how to grow your wealth through real estate investing. Be introduced to the players that are getting it done and learn how you can get involved. And now, here's your host, Darin Batchelder.
Hello, everyone. Today we have a very special guest. We have Wah Win with us. Wah, appreciate you coming on the show.
Thanks for having me, Darin.
Absolutely. So a little bit on how we know each other. We are both part of the same multifamily mentorship group based here in Dallas, the Brad Sumrock Group. And we've known each other for several years, but just in the last couple of years, Wah and her husband, Jaime, have been killing it. So I am excited to hear what they've been up to, how they've been doing it, and go from there. So first question, how many properties and how many units are you currently invested in?
So we are currently invested in 21 properties, over 5,000 units, and 8 of those, so it's out of those 21, 8 of those were co-sponsors, and the other 13 were limited partners.
That's amazing. So help the listeners understand the difference between, I've had a lot of guests on the show where we talk about limited partner, general partner, but this idea of co-sponsor, so let's introduce that term to the listeners and explain what that is, because like you mentioned, out of the 21 properties, you guys have been co-sponsors in 8 deals.
Yeah, so co-sponsor interchangeably is like we use that as general partners. So Jaime and I, we usually partner alongside other, depending on which market. So we heavily are in Houston and DFW. And then we have one property that we're general partners in South Carolina. But the general partnership, unlike the passive, as a limited, you're more hands-on. So for us, we do 2 parts of the pillar. Actually, we do 3, but we like to predominantly focus on 2 pillars. And so a general partnership / co-sponsorship either focuses on the acquisitions or building the relationship with the brokers, looking and touring at the deals, underwriting for the property. So Jaime and I are always constantly doing that aspect. And then the second pillar that we're always doing as co-sponsors / general partners is investor relations and the equity capital raise. So those are kind of the 2 pillars that we're very strong in and to have really helped accelerate and join other teams who are more experienced on the asset management, operations, construction, CapEx projects. So we like to partner with other general partners that's their strength.
That's fantastic. I mean, that's so important when you're out looking for partners that you share that, right? I mean, there's a lot of different people in this industry, and it's not good enough just to say, hey, let's partner together, right? I mean, you could be a good person, but if you both like doing the same piece, it doesn't make, all that much sense because you're still lacking in 1 or 2 of the other areas. So having that discussion early on as to, what part of the business do you want to, manage and are you stronger at, and then try to complement with other partners that are stronger in different areas.
Correct.
So talk a little bit about your background, because you and your husband, first of all, you guys are a team and, it's not always that way. There could be that the husband's in real estate and the wife's not, or the wife is in real estate and the husband's not, but you guys are a team. So talk about, your team approach and kind of what roles and responsibilities the 2 of you play. And then, where did you guys come from in terms of, your background before you got into real estate investing?
So I was born in Manila in the refugee camp in the Philippines. And Jaime was born in Mexico. So we're both immigrants. I came to the States when I was 8 years old. Jaime came to the U.S. when he was 5 years old. Came from very, very humble beginnings. I've been a young entrepreneur by the age of 10, so I was working in the family business
10?
by age 10, working full-time. It was school and work. That's all I did, 7 days a week.
Come on. What did you do?
I started off in the convenience store, so I worked the kitchen with my mom. And then my mom doesn't speak English, so I worked the cash register in the front of the house a lot of the time. So we actually, in New Orleans, we've had 6 different businesses, but we started off with a little corner store in the projects of New Orleans. And
holy cow! So you learned hard work at an early age.
I did. My dad passed away when I was 13, so it was just my mom, single mom, watching the 3 of us. I was the baby, youngest girl. She never had the chance to go to school because she was a girl. And so, but she was really good with people. And so I learned people skills from her and hard work. And so work ethic was very strong, always working. She worked 80, 90-hour work weeks all the time in the business. And so,
Wow.
But, Jaime and I, we met in optometry school. And he was my lab partner. So we've been together now for 16 years.
Fantastic! Congratulations!
Thank you.
So you're both eye doctors.
We're both eye doctors. So we graduated, came out with over $300,000 of student loan debt. So you can only imagine coming out with that much student loan debt and trying to get a loan it's challenging. So, but our dream was always to build our own practice, have our own practice, be our own bosses. So we worked for someone else for about 4.5 years. Again, we kept picking up extra relief work, and we worked 7 days a week, hustle bustle, trying to have enough money to buy our own practice. And so we did that 4.5 years ago. We purchased premium location in Dallas, Fort Worth, in an area called Uptown West Village. And so we bought our first practice there. And then 2 years after that, we bought another practice in the Plano area where we currently live. And so we've had those practices going on 11 years and 9 years now. Built a really strong team, grown those practices. But we pivoted into real estate because we were still working so many hours in our own business and in our own practice. So when my daughter came along, she's 7 now, we pivoted into real estate because we wanted to find diversified income and really truly more time. And that was our challenge with our practices, is even after we accumulated having more financial freedom, we didn't have time freedom. So pivoted into learning real estate, listened to a lot of podcasts, learned a lot of networking groups, and that's how we found different mentorship programs and wound up entering Brad Summerock's ecosystem, which we're so grateful for.
That's fantastic. That you said something there that I can relate to very much, is that, I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. I always wanted to own my own business. I always wanted to create my own schedule.
Yeah.
And I did that, and I created my own business back in 2007. And it gave me the ability to go to all my kids' sporting events and create my own schedule and vacations and all of that. But like real estate, having gotten in real estate about 4 years ago, like the wealth building opportunities in real estate, is just crazy. When I talk to people in their 20s and 30s, I'm like, man, I wish that I had started back then. Right?
Absolutely.
I mean, would you agree?
Absolutely. If I had to do it all over again.
Right. It's cool to think that you busted your tail for 4.5 years working for somebody else to save up the money to buy that first practice. And then after a while you're like, man, the money's good, but man, I'm still busting my hump, Yeah. So now, one thing I see that you and your husband do very well is that, you guys have not only formed relationships within the, people within the group, but you're getting out and you're going to conferences, that are outside of the multifamily space, that are entrepreneurial, that you're getting involved in other groups and conferences all across the country. Talk about why do you do that?
So as we started going to different events, more entrepreneur. So it was kind of building both sides. And the reason we started going outside of the multifamily space is we started realizing there's so many different avenues of people who would benefit from knowing about this model of syndications. I was so surprised. I was asked to speak at a dentist conference, and it was all women speakers. So it was all different type of doctors. Although it was led by a dentist group, it was promoted for all different doctors. And so I spoke at that event, and I didn't realize that nobody in the room knew what an apartment investing syndication involved. And I was like, yeah, so it's not so readily available that these, and so as I'm talking to my colleagues in different circles, and we have a lot of different, and it's not just doctors, but I started with that group and going to conferences, and then I started going to different, I would get asked to speak at other type of conferences that were just for entrepreneurs. And it wasn't specifically for real estate purposes. It was just hearing my story of starting with nothing, and just through grit and hard work and perseverance and how we started building wealth. They just wanted to learn our background and strategies and things like that. And so when I started speaking to other different entrepreneur groups, so many of them were interested in this avenue. But aside from just the real estate aspect, it helps us continue to learn and grow. And so we're not limited, and we don't pigeonhole ourselves in like, oh, we're doctors or we're just real estate syndicators only. So we're always open to learning from all walks of life. We don't just specifically stay in one circle of people, because what I've learned as we're attending so many different type of conferences and different type of people that we get to meet, we learn a ton, and it impacts us in a positive way in all different areas of our life.
That's huge. I agree. I mean, like, look, if you're in a multifamily mentorship group, you know what syndication means, right? But if you're not like in that world, that word is intimidating. Mm-hmm. Like, what is that? Mm-hmm. You know? So how would you explain it in your own words?
So I simplify by saying a syndication is where a group of investors really just pull the money together in order to buy a larger property that is professionally third-party managed. And it's really leveraging a team to do the work so that the investors don't have to be the landlord and don't have to deal with, people always talk about tenants, termites and toilets and things, so a lot of people want to get into the real estate space. So a syndication is really kind of leveling that playing field to get part ownership into an asset class that you would never imagine the average person to be able to get into. You would assume institutions and only the wealthy could ever be a part to own something like that. And so when I explain what a syndication model is and how that works, people are like, wow, how come I never knew about this?
Right. Why is this a secret?
Why, right?
Like, look, I think that because some deals are accredited only, investors only, and some are sophisticated in credit. But I think that the government, they created that so that people don't get burned and take in the last of their money. But I also think it's a shame that it's this unless you're involved in a higher network, you don't even get introduced to these opportunities, and I think that's a real shame, because the returns are fantastic. The depreciation, is tax advantages is fantastic. And the wealth building opportunities of being in real estate is just massive. Like we both said, we wish that we had gotten involved earlier. I love how you answered that question. You just made it very simple for people to understand. It's just a bunch of people coming together to buy an asset they couldn't buy on their own. I mean, it's a great way of putting it. Some people ask about, the structure, like, well, how does that happen? So can you explain, it may sound silly for people that do it all the time, but for the people that don't, explain how it's just forming an LLC and people investing in that. And, if you could explain that process a little bit, just so that they can maybe visualize how that works.
From the passive investor side or from the team general?
Yeah, so the passive investor, they're like, okay, well, what do I do? Like, I just send my money. Well,
right. So I always set up calls, and so whether they're accredited or not, I still like to have that conversation and meeting, because it is such a relationship business. And I think it's really important for any investor to understand the ins and outs of how the syndication model works prior to a deal going active. So it's really important, especially in a 506B, where that has to be the case. But even in a 506C, where an investor is accredited, but they may not be well versed in how the multifamily syndication works, and every team and every project, a deal is structured differently. So for me, it's really important that for our investors, that we have that conversation so that they know how our team and what our criteria is when we look for properties, what markets, what the typical structure for fees are, how the partnership and roles are split. So I like to explain that to my investors prior so they at least kind of have an understanding. And returns and things like that, because even as an accredited investor, that doesn't mean that they understand and that their expectations are met. So I always want to make sure that an investor understands how a syndication really works and what to expect as far as cash flow, distributions, closing time period, hold times. And although they can hear all of those when we're going live on a deal, it's just that if they don't have a lot of that kind of set up and understood on the front end, sometimes these deals get filled up and subscribed and funded really quickly, and they miss that opportunity, or they're asking a lot of questions because they're not well versed yet, and so they miss that window. So I think that's important that investors get that education part. And that's why having an ecosystem where we joined Brad's group, we know that the investors in that group already are educated on how it works and what to expect. But the average person who's outside of this sphere, they're busy professionals. They have no desire to join any type of group. They don't have time or interest for that. I think it's important to set up that phone call to really get to connect and understand what their investing goals are and explain what your strategies, and when we partner with other people, how the deal usually is and what our criteria is for us to co-GP with someone else, what we specifically are looking for, and that we're vetting the other partners that we are joining, because that's important to our investors, because our investors ultimately trust us. So when we partner with someone else, they're trusting us with that process of vetting the whole team.
Yeah, that's critical, and that's different than if you're buying stocks, right? I mean, if you're buying stocks, you're just going onto a platform and the technology is available, right, where you click and you're done. And you don't get on a phone call and talk to somebody and build a relationship. And that's different about this business. But some people have asked me, like, well, hey, as a passive, do I have an ownership percentage? How does that work? And, it's just that, from a listener's benefit standpoint, a newly created LLC will be created. And then all the limited partners are buying a % ownership in that LLC. And that LLC is going to go buy the apartment community.
Correct.
So that's kind of how that works. So talk about mindset, because you could have just done one deal and then been done. But like, you guys have kind of kept moving and growing, and so a lot of that has to do with what you think you're capable of.
Absolutely.
So talk a little bit about mindset and how that plays into you.
It kind of ties directly with what you had mentioned earlier of why we go to so many different events, masterminds, different circle of outside of just multifamily. And the reason being is because that elevates and helps us grow our mindset. And using momentum and leveraging that momentum and the circle of influence of those who are already achieving what we already want to achieve. And when we're in close proximity to people who are achieving that, our mindset continually keeps growing. And you hear it all the time. It's 80% mindset and visualization and consistency and taking action. And you'll hear that over and over and over again. And I cannot preach that enough.
Enough, right? Keep on saying it. Keep on saying it. I talk about taking action all the time, and I know that there's listeners that are just still stay on the fence, right? But the other thing about that, mindset, like you said, expands. It expands. Like when you first went to the multifamily ship mentorship group, it was all about getting your first deal done, right? And then you kind of think that's the end goal, but then when you get there, then you see other people that are at a different place, and you're like, how did they get there? And then you expand your mindset, you expand what you think you're capable of, but you can't get there unless you take action on the first
Correct.
thing,
And that's the thing with getting into this space is staying focused and just making sure. And for us, it didn't matter how long it was going to take us to get to that first deal. It wasn't an option to quit. And Jaime and I, when we decided that we were going to go do this, that we were all in. And so we dedicated our time into the space. We loved it. We continued to network. We always showed up. And when the opportunity came, then it came. But if it didn't happen, we were okay with that because we always continued to learn. So when we were chasing deals at the beginning, and we would constantly be best and final, and we would lose out, best and final.
Do you remember the first time you get into best and final, you're like, all right, I'm in best and final, right? The first time you're in best and final, like you don't even care so much that you're not going to win, right? You're like, oh man, I'm in best and final, I'm close. And then after that, you're like, oh, best and final. Yeah. I don't want to be in best and final. I want to win.
Right. But, I share with passive investors the journey of how challenging, especially in a competitive market, how challenging it is and how many deals get filtered through and the work that gets involved with truly winning one deal. And so for investors who are long-term investors and they know the process and they know a good deal, they jump on it, and that's why it gets filled fast. But I always explain from both sides, being on both sides already, and we still passively invest always still, but understanding both sides of the fence on the general partnership side and the limited partner side, what that process entails. But yeah, take action.
So were you a passive investor before you were a general partner?
Yes, absolutely.
And do you think that brought value?
Absolutely. I highly, highly encourage that. And we did 7 passive investment deals before we even did our first, attempted our first general partnership deal. Because we really wanted to understand. We learned a ton because we were very active passive investors. And so we always looked at our financials and everything that was given to us on monthly. I think as a passive investor, you learn a ton. And
what do you learn?
So from a passive investor, especially if someone's going out there, we learn style of communication from a sponsorship team, what I liked and what I didn't like. Right. Financial reporting, how it was, and just the frequency of things. So I learned being a passive investor. So when it was our turn, what I would have ideally liked, so I think if you're wanting to go active one side, being a passive investor kind of allowed us to see the style of communication, the type of reporting, the frequency of reporting, the availability to answer questions and getting back. So those are things we pay attention to because those are things as a passive, now being on the turntable on the other side, I'm very in tune with that.
I think that's very important. I mean, some of the things that you mentioned in terms of learning, the style of communication. So you were in a number of different deals, and you take what you like and you discard the things that you don't like, and you create your own style. You get a sense for all the numbers. You get a sense for the terminology. Terminology both in the summaries that the sponsors are sending, and also in reviewing the financials. You see, what are all the different income numbers? What are all the different expense numbers? And you start to see some trends too. And you can see if the property is improving,
Correct.
right, by looking at the numbers. You also get a sense of feeling. I don't know, a feeling like you're in good hands, or a feeling of like, I don't know if I'm going to invest with this person again, right? Like it's just a feeling that you get. And there's, people are people, and some people might want to invest with you, and some people might want to invest with me, and somebody might want to invest with somebody else because they connect in some way with that person. And so all those things are really important learning lessons. And, the passive is investing their hard-earned money. And so knowing what it feels like to hand that over to somebody and entrust somebody else with that is an important step, I think, in learning how to become a general partner or co-sponsor.
Absolutely. And you learn markets too, different sub-markets and management teams, and just a lot of different things that you hear. And then especially if a deal has gone full cycle, you can really understand, pro forma projections before, when we first invested, and then when they sold the property, how did it do compared to what they said it was going to do? And so when you feel that level of confidence of like, okay, this is now real, we're getting the cash and it's sold, or it's doing better than expected. So when you go active, there's a whole nother level of confidence when you are already in that position to now go raise equity or explain to an investor how the process works, being that I've already gone through and seen that. Because a lot of investors who are new to the space are very skeptical because it sounds too good to be true.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, when I joined, I actually joined after going to a meetup. I hadn't even met Brad, hadn't even gone to a conference, and I joined, and then I went. The first thing I did was set up a bunch of Starbucks meetings with different sponsors, and that's what I wanted to know: is this real? And so I met with all these people, and I'm like, all right, tell me what's going on. Like, is this real? And they're like, holy cow, I'm making all this. Like, they're telling me the details. I'm like, oh my gosh. And it was one after the other. It was like, changed my life, changed my life, changed my life. I was like, holy
I know.
Cow. I wish I had done this earlier. So, but I'm glad I've done it now.
Absolutely.
So, there's still other people that don't know, right? So that's I think what you're trying to do is get out there, and I'm trying to do with the podcast, get out there and let more people know that this opportunity exists. It's not for everybody, but some people don't even know they have that opportunity. So talk about when you started to become a general partner and you started to go out to your network. Like, what happened when you first did that? So you and Jaime are talking, and you're like, okay, this is our first deal that we're actually going out and raising capital from other people. Who should we send it to?
So we were always building our database and building those investor relations even before we had our very first deal. But we were telling them our journey, what we were doing, telling all our colleagues, anybody who was in our circle of people. And then, of course, being part of Brad's ecosystem, getting to know a lot of people in there. So we always were just building that relationship and going to meetups and things like that, so that when that first deal would hit. And so the question's always like, how much do you think you can raise? And that's a really difficult question. You're like, well, I don't know. This is my first deal. I don't know how many. I have a lot of people I've spoken to and a lot of investors, but that doesn't mean I don't know how many. So it's truly like, I don't know exactly how many will join us alongside us. But a lot of people have been reaching out and like, wow, you need to get a deal. Like, we're ready. So we knew we had a lot of people who were ready. We just needed to get, an opportunity for them to invest in. And so we felt pretty comfortable, because we were waiting and waiting and waiting to get into that first deal. And so we knew a lot of people we stayed in touch with were constantly like, we're ready. Come on, let's get a deal. And so when we finally had the opportunity to get a deal, and we said, we think we can raise about, $2 to $3 million. And that's what we thought, and Lord and behold, we did, so I was like, yay!
Fantastic. Good for you.
So, but you never know, it's one of those, but you're just constantly building that relationship and staying in touch with the investors, whether I had a deal or not. It didn't matter. I always was still keeping them in the loop of what we were doing, what we were seeking, kind of our process.
How are you keeping people in the loop?
So I have a list of people that I text or Facebook message, or always just kind of rotating to keep a pulse on people. And whether they're invested with me yet or not yet, they might have shown interest and not actually invested yet. But I still keep in touch with people, whether they are investors or not, but it's somebody that I have educated, somebody that we've talked to, someone that we've met up with. I just rotate through my list of people, and I'll just do at least 10 or 20 people every day that I'll see, whether it's an email, a text, a Facebook message, just something quick to have a touch point with them.
Fantastic. So what I think you did fantastic was, there's some people I think that they don't spend the time building that database as they're learning. They just get to that point. All of a sudden, it's like a fire drill. Like, oh no, who am I gonna get to partner with us? And the other thing is just telling people what you do. I think that is so important. And even if there's listeners here that it's not the real estate, you want to try to do something else. Let people know what you do, and what you are trying to accomplish. And you don't have to already have done it. People want to see you on that journey. They want to know what you're doing. And there's some people that are going to sit on the sidelines and they're not going to jump in until after you've proven yourself. But there's others that are more than willing, they're not going to do it themselves, and they're just happy to partner with somebody that they know and they trust, and they're ready to go. Like you said, you got investors that are like, come on, we're ready. Let's go. Get one already.
Yeah, and it's okay.
So that's fantastic.
And some of my colleagues and friends and things who kind of waited, some of them jump right in, right? Whatever you're doing, Hua, we want part of that. And then some of them, you're going to always have some people who are, I'm going to wait and see. I'm going to wait and see if this is the real thing. Right. And now, they jump on board. And for me, I don't take it personally because I understand. But then in hindsight, they always tell me, Hua, I wish I would have started at the beginning with you, earlier. That's always been, always comes back like, oh, darn, I wish I would have done this earlier,
So you said you don't take it personally. I don't. So how do you not take it personally? I mean, I say that because I think that that's a big fear for a lot of people, and that they do feel like it's a personal rejection. But
for me,
it's really
a no is a not yet.
There you go.
And I spend the same amount of time with them, whether they invested with me or not. Even if I presented, gosh, how many deals, and they're still not in, that's okay. A no is still not yet.
Absolutely, not yet. And it's also, you use the term opportunity.
Right.
It's not about, needing them. You're presenting an opportunity. Mm-hmm. And some of those people that said no, they say, oh, I wish I had started way back when. Some people just have to kind of wait. There's some people that will never jump off the ship, but all you can do is keep presenting that opportunity.
Absolutely.
And stay in front of them. So that's fantastic. Hey, talk about, I've seen you guys kind of transitioned, and I've seen a lot of syndicators doing this, transition from kind of that BC up to A properties. So talk about that transition and, why you like A properties over BC.
So when we
Or do you still look at all three?
currently we predominantly look at A and B. We don't really look at C-class properties anymore because the markets that we're in, I mean, DFW and Houston predominantly, I mean, the cap rates have gone down and they're so compressed. And just considering that the labor cost and supply cost and everything has gone up so much. And so when we're buying properties, like our first A-class deal that we did was an uptown deal that is literally 3 blocks from my practice. And so I've had this practice going on 11 years. This is the submarket my patients live in. I know this submarket in the back of my hands. And so it's high-paid professionals, younger. And so when we looked at that property, I mean, and it was an A-class deal, 2016, and we knew that it was so under market rent. The owner is a Canadian seller. They really didn't have a pulse on keeping up with the market. It wasn't a syndication type model for them. So when they sold it, it was just because one of the partners wanted out. It was 3 of them, and one of them wanted out. And so when we had that opportunity, and we knew the rents were so low, compared to all the rent comps, and I was like, you cannot build the replacement cost for that property. You just can't. And it's high demand area, low supply. And so we knew going in, we wanted properties like that. So to have an opportunity to go in, and it's a very light value add. We're doing smart technology package. We're doing exterior painting. We redid some of the pool, add kind of up the fitness area. So we're doing our own touches to upgrade that area, doing kind of business area for stay at home. So we want to tailor to that resident base, but we know that the demographic there and their income level can support the rent raises. So for us, it's really a really lower risk for us because we're not going in spending a ton of money for upgrades where we're then pushing rents. We organically are going in and getting $300 or $400 rent bumps when we underwrote for 100, 150. So it's crazy but we knew this market could do that. And that's why we're looking for opportunities where we're going in where there's a seller who has a nice A or B class property in a premium location where there's higher than normal income level that can support what we're doing. And we don't have to worry so much about we're going to spend more on appliances or it's going to be a long wait time and things like that. For the C model, you really have to bank on getting those upgrades done to really be able to achieve the 100, 150 rent bumps that you are looking for. And in like these A class and higher B class, if you're in the right premium market and you buy it on a low cost basis or a decent cost basis, but you can get organic rent bump, that is a value add opportunity, just not the traditional value add that we think of when we're looking at a C class.
Yeah, I mean that's huge. I mean, I went and I invested in an A class in the Houston market, and as a passive, and I went down and checked out some of the properties nearby, and I walked away and I was like, the sponsor on this deal is going to be able to raise rents. The rents that they're charging new leases are like $200 to $300 higher than 12 months ago. And they don't even have to renovate. It's just the market has gone up. And, we don't know for sure if inflation is going to, take hold for sure. It looks like it is, but if wage inflation really picks up, then people are going to have more money. People are going to be able to spend more money on rent. And if you can keep your cost basis down in terms of, your debt service and your other expenses, but then your rents are continuing to go up. I mean, then profitability will just go higher. And then these A properties, there's less maintenance. Correct. Less, it's newer and there's less. So talk about, you mentioned one thing, you're buying it substantially below replacement cost. And to me is an important indicator. So talk to the listeners, maybe they don't think of that. What is, replacement cost, and why is that important to you when you're looking at different opportunities?
So like when we were looking at this one, the replacement cost in the area that we're in Uptown, you're talking about $330 a door. So if you have an opportunity to go in and buy at $250 something a door without having to do much, that's a great opportunity,
Yeah. So what she's talking about here is like, look, if somebody was to build a new property right next door, they'd have to build at $330 a door. Well, in order to, have it be profitable, they're going to have rents that are substantially higher than them buying at $250 a door. So it gives them that cushion, and it helps the risk factor on the deal tremendously. So I think it's very important to look at replacement costs and whether somebody can build right near you for the same price or lower.
Right.
Talk about being a woman in the business, because it's there's more and more women that are getting into the business, but it's still, heavily tilted towards the man side. So do you see that as a pro, con,
I see it as a
neutral?
I see it as a pro.
Okay, so explain.
So I see it as a pro because I always like to be the underdog in any industry. And coming in, and Jaime, even though Jaime and I do this as a team, there are a lot of times that I'll show up to meetings and conferences or tours where I'm going alone or he's going alone. And when we first started off in the business, you can always tell if someone thinks you're for real or not. And I remember at the very beginning, the vibe and the energy I would get is like, oh, she's not for real. Like, who is this girl trying to come in? So I could feel that energy sometimes, but I would never take it personal. It would give me more motivation. It would ignite me a little bit more just to be like, one day, that same broker, I will buy a property from that broker.
Right. People don't look at you that way anymore, do they? No, they don't look at you that way anymore.
No, but no, I honestly don't, I don't take it personally, whether it's a broker or whether it's a contractor or whether it's a service provider. It doesn't matter. But I think it's been more now. A lot more women are getting into the space. And I think in our ecosystem, especially, there's a lot of women that are getting into the space, so it's not as uncommon. When I go to other conferences that are more multifamily, I think there's less women. And so it is an advantage, I think, because you do stand out being in the space, being a woman. So I take it as like if it's more male dominated, I love it,
Right. I had one woman I asked that question, and she said, if I go to a conference, like, who do the guys want to talk to? Another guy or something?
Right?
So, right? So there you go. But you kind of have to combine the fact that, like, okay, they want to talk to me, but they also believe I can do the business, right? And so you've gotten there. So that's fantastic. When, in terms of the difficulties in the business, what kind of challenges do you run into? What kind of learning lessons have you come across after you've gotten into the GP side?
Lots. Lots of learning lessons. When we started off, we tried different avenues. So it's trying to figure out, when we first getting in the space, trying to figure out how do I position myself best. And I think at the beginning when we started out, we wanted to do it all ourselves. So we were heavily underwriting, touring. We constantly were underwriting and touring. And we were looking at smaller properties at the beginning because we figured, okay, we'll start small and then go bigger afterwards until we get some under our belt. And I think that was a little bit in hindsight. If I had to do that over again, I would have directly gone into the ecosystem and just latched on to an experienced partnership team and added value that way. And we eventually wound up doing that because we just got into the best and final, and where we were doing all the upfront work. And what I realize is when you're new and the brokers don't know you, and then you come in, and then we bring in an experienced sponsor after the fact when we get closer to best and final. I think I would rather have done it the other way, where it would have been a lot easier if we just put it out there and communicate it more effectively in the ecosystem that this is what we add value, and this is what we're strong, and this is what we would like to do, but leverage them first and get our feet wet. And in the beginning, because of us wanting to do it all by ourselves and starting small, that wasn't the best idea. And I remember the first deal, we actually put money down. It was a small project. And we've had 2 small projects that we put hard money down. And it didn't go the way we wanted. And it was out of our control. It was lending things because it was different parcels. And it was a 24 unit deal. And we were going to do a joint venture on it. We weren't going to syndicate it. But it was small deals that we were doing. And in hindsight, I wish we wouldn't have done that. And we wound up not going through with it on both deals. And so we personally took a...
Did you lose your hard money?
We did. We lost half of it on both deals.
Oh, wow.
And so that was our beginning journey of trying to get our feet in the door. And, and then with everything with COVID and things like that. But in hindsight, those 2 deals that didn't go accordingly was a blessing in disguise. Because had we pursued those deals, it would have been a much bigger headache. And it would have been a smaller deal that was putting in a lot more stress and our time. Right. So I think in hindsight, It was a learning. We definitely learned. We lost a little bit of money doing it. But in hindsight, we learned a ton, and we use that momentum now.
No, but it's great advice for new people too. I mean, you hear that a lot, and it plays into mindset too. You didn't mention it, but I have to imagine that part of that played into. Part of it was, hey, let's just do it ourselves, but part of it is like, it's safer to do this 20 unit. Like, let's start small and do that versus trying to get involved in 100 or 200 unit community.
But I will tell you, Darin, the amount of work it took for us to do that 24 or 56 unit deal, the 2 small ones, was more than the 243 unit deal.
Is that crazy?
It's crazy.
It's crazy. I mean, it is. It really is. But there's a lot of people out there that they think they have to start with a duplex or a fourplex or an eightplex, and they don't really understand it. But it's partnering with other people, and you also use the word value. Like, look, there has to be something in it for the experienced guy, right? So the experienced guy is not going to do all the work of everything and then just bring you on because you're nice.
Right.
Right. That would be great if that happened, but that doesn't happen. So you have to communicate, like you said, you have to communicate the pieces that you like and that you could take off, their shoulders. So you're providing value to them and they're providing value to you, and that's a good partnership.
Correct. So communication and making it very clear and concise of your strengths and the roles that you can add value to is critical.
That's huge. It really is. What's your stretch goal? Like, for where are you guys going from here?
Our stretch goal, just like we did for 2021, that was our best year yet. And so we're leveraging that. We've did something completely new in 2021 was getting out there and speaking on different stages and different circles. And so for 2022, we're going to be co-host for a new TV show.
Are you really?
Yes.
So first of all, talk about the speaking engagements and look, that's another thing that I got to imagine the first time you did it, you were a little nervous.
Oh, I have my worst fear is public speaking. So you talk about stretching. Really? Getting on people's stages, doing a podcast is a stretch, much less going on a live stage in front of hundreds of people. But that's been an avenue of stretching, and I didn't think I would enjoy it as much as I have. And so we plan to stretch that.
Why do you think you enjoy it?
The feedback that we've gotten of inspiration and just knowledge and education that people were not aware of. And so we've gotten so much positive feedback from there that it's like, okay, it's just all in my head. It's fear. And every single time I step on a stage, I'm still nervous. I still get butterflies, but it's for a reason. And so that's been a big stretch for us, is to get out there, to be on stage, to open up, because opportunities will open. And so when those opportunities open, it's being ready to say yes to those opportunities. And so
a few things there. One is like getting on stage. I've read that, singers and actors, they're scared getting on too. But like you, the feedback, the positive feedback that comes back is what drives them to do it, to keep coming back and do it again. But I think it's twofold. Opportunities arise by doing it, and you have to be ready to jump on those. And you're also giving back. Mm-hmm. You're giving back to other people. You're inspiring other people. You're pouring, your story and your journey into other people, and people need that. And we needed that, right? We needed
Absolutely.
That in the beginning. Other people to pour into us, right? And then you're pouring into other people, and then somebody that's listening to you that takes action is going to do it for somebody else.
Absolutely.
1 year, 2 years, 3 years from now.
Absolutely.
So talk about this TV thing. I haven't heard that.
This is new. This is still in the works. This is something brand new that we're going to be co-host on a financial freedom show. And so Jaime and I are going to do that together as a couple.
Fantastic. What's the how often will that show be on, and what's it going to be on?
It hasn't aired yet, but it's going to start. We're probably going to start in February, mid-February, and it's going to be an hour every Monday, and it's going to be on different topics, and we're going to have different speakers on. But it's not anything specifically related to one avenue. It's just sharing life stories and sharing different strategies. And although the show is called Financial Freedom, it's about enlightening, encouraging, and empowering, and living the lifestyle and the bigger why and the impact. And so that's really why the show, and financial freedom means different things to different people. And it's not just the money freedom and time freedom, but living the life you want to live. And so really that's what the show is about.
That's huge. That's huge. So how has this whole process helped you guys live the life you want to live?
Oh, gosh. Jaime and I are so blessed. I mean, I can't imagine being in a better, we're so grateful. And to have the time freedom and true financial freedom that we have now, to travel all over the world, be with our little girl. I can't, without this vehicle of the real estate, this wouldn't have been possible for us. So it has totally changed our life.
Well, you have one daughter?
One daughter, 7 years old.
Think about as she grows up, the lessons that you guys are going to teach her. I mean, it's huge. And all the other lives that you're touching every conference you go to. So thank you for that. I love your story. I love your demeanor. You have a very soft-spoken trusting voice to you.
Thank you, Darin.
And approach. So it's very apparent, why you've been as successful as you've been. So I wish the two of you much, much, much success going forward. What do you guys like to do outside of work? Travel, besides travel?
Food.
You mentioned travel.
Food. We're big foodies.
Nice.
We love
food and travel.
Food and travel.
All right. Well, you know what I like? I like being invited to go eat food and travel. So ping me and we will be there for sure.
Well, we will make that happen.
All right. Fantastic. Well, if somebody wants to reach out to you and get to know you better, what's the best way to do that?
They can go on our website, passivewealth23.com.
Passivewealth23.com. So what's the significance of 23?
It's my lucky number.
All right. All right. Let's hear a story about how number 23 is lucky.
It's my birthday.
All right. All right. What month? November. Okay, it passed, so I can't say happy birthday. Well, thank you for coming on the show. Thank you for sharing with others. Look forward to seeing you at another event. And listeners, definitely check these two out because they're just salt of the earth people and good people looking to help others. And so reach out. Check out our website, passivewealth23.com. And until next week.
Thank you, Darin.
Thank you for watching Darin Batchelder's Real Estate Investing Show. If you liked the episode, please click the like button and subscribe to the show. If you already are subscribed, then thank you. And please share the show with a friend. Check out other free resources at darinbatchelder.com/learn.